Welcome to It's Always Sunny in, I guess Hollywood. For once, we're actually talking about a movie that's in Hollywood. That's crazy.
I thought this
Um,
movie was set in nowhere.
You could call California nowhere.
California's a big place. It's insane how California is such like a big state. It's like a huge chunk of it is rural. Then you got like the two major cities, and then the two major cities are also like a whole state apart too. It's a bizarrely large state. Yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourself? I'm Red Drumarts.
I'm Patrick.
And I'm Lugia.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Nowhere by Gregg Araki, the final part of his teenage apocalypse trilogy. Before that, though, just some quick news. I say this with a heavy heart, but Cormac McCarthy passed away. He's a legendary author, one of my favorites, actually. In fact, his probably his most famous work, No Country for Old Men, was the basis for one of my favorite movies, and it's also a pretty damn good book itself. Some other of his well-known work is Blood Meridian, which I'm currently reading. It's also pretty fantastic. He also wrote The Road, which was one of the big inspirations for The Last of Us, if you're a fan of The Last of Us. He's got a lot of just classic works, and he was widely regarded by the book world as the greatest living author. So, well, he's no longer the greatest living, but he's still, one of the greatest ever. If you're a fan of books, I'd recommend him. His books aren't actually that long, so, yeah, I'd highly recommend checking out his work. He made good stuff, up until death, I mentioned The Road and, No Country for Old Men. Those were all made in the 21st century. Like, he was making great stuff very late into his career. Interesting figure, too, lived in poverty for a good chunk of his life.
Oh,
Some of
damn,
his
really?
books, yeah, Blood Meridian, which is considered his magnum opus, that was a book that got popular retroactively because he had this one book in '92. It wasn't until 1992 where he became successful, and then after that, people looked at his old books and were like, "Oh shit, these old books are like even better. What the hell?" Apparently, he had like a really shitty, I guess, agent or publisher until then. Fantastic writer, one of my favorites. Another one of my favorite artists, John Romita Sr., passed away. He's a legendary artist, probably best known. He's a legendary comic book artist at Marvel, probably best known for his contributions to Spider-Man. He was the illustrator for basically all of Spider-Man's most famous stories. He was the guy that did Spider-Man after Steve Ditko left. Most of his storylines were like the college series, so he's the one that created Mary Jane Watson. He's the one that did the Spider-Man Nowhere arc. Spider-Man No More arc. A huge Spider-Man was probably like at his most successful during his tenure, and most of the inspirations for other adaptations of Spider-Man draw from his run specifically. Even like almost all the current editors, like they're trying to say that like we're trying to recreate that because that era of Spider-Man was the best era of Spider-Man. So yeah, we're gonna come back to Spider-Man actually a little bit after, but John Romita Sr., probably one of the most significant voices in Spider-Man history and in comic history. His son, John Romita Jr., was also a pretty significant artist, and what's funny is John Romita Jr. was the illustrator for, in my opinion, the best run of Spider-Man since John Romita Sr.'s arc. So I guess writing good Spider-Man stories runs in the blood, or illustrating good Spider-Man stories runs in the blood. He also worked on Daredevil. He was responsible for the initial revival of Captain America. I guess the last bit of news is the Reddit protests. Are you guys familiar with what's happening there?
I've only briefly heard about it.
Same here.
Okay, so the Reddit, the company, they have jacked up their API prices, so all the mods of the subreddits of Reddit have decided to go on a blackout, where they go private, and basically Reddit is completely unusable right now, and it's gonna be until they fold or one side folds. It's basically a boycott on Reddit. So yeah, it's interesting. I hope they win. The protesters. I hope Reddit a lot of the internet companies nowadays, because they're effectively monopolies, they kind of do a lot of sort of anti-consumer practices, and it's nice to see a website actually fighting back for once. Like Twitter's
Fight
done
the
a bunch of
power.
shitty things, but nothing's
Fight the
really come
power.
from that. Yeah, fight the power.
Imagine not Discord moderators, Reddit moderators trying to get a real job now. Crazy.
I think it's crazy that of like the top 200 subreddits, it's only run by like 3 people. It was like, Jesus Christ, how do you mod that many? Anyway, modern movie talk. I saw a couple. So since we mentioned Spider-Man earlier, I saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So I believe last week I mentioned that I don't love the first one as much as most people, even though I find the animation fantastic. I am glad to say I fucking love this movie, man. I was surprised about how good I liked it. Yeah, it fixed pretty much all my issues with the first movie. In my first film, I thought like it was too light and weightless. Went too fast. Um, this one, I don't know. Everything felt snappy, but I feel like they kind of dwelled on the important stuff. I'd say like my favorite parts was definitely when we focus on Miles's personal life. That was great, and also I just kind of related to that a lot because their parents remind me a lot of my parents. So I saw this with my family actually, and my mom definitely agreed. She related to Miles's mom so much. It was very funny watching. And the only thing I really expected was it to feel larger scale, but they do dwell a lot on the actual personal lives of the characters. This movie in particular focuses mostly on Gwen's arc, as much as Miles are kind of deuteragonists. And yeah, I will say I have some issues, but I'll get into that later. I thought it was a lot funnier. Maybe it's because of the pacing tweaks, but the jokes really landed with me this time, where it was more hit or miss last time. I thought the villain was great, the Spot, and also Miguel. I kind of like how they kind of like were able to balance the line with Spot with making him like funny, but like actually build him up as a threat. So he's like now this Lovecraftian monster.
Also, can we take the time to appreciate that one of the best jokes from the first movie actually ties in to the villain in this one?
Yeah.
Like Sonic 2 all over again with the Olive Garden man.
Yes.
No, it was fucking great. When they reveal the connection to the first film, everybody in my theater was like, "Holy shit!"
Let's see. Presentation. Okay, so I mentioned I was bitter hit or miss on this. I'd say like 70% of the time, this looked like one of the best films I've ever seen. For the rest, I thought it was really off. Like, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I feel like during the Gwen sequences, like in her universe, sometimes it looked beautiful, but other times it looked like really muddy, and I thought like the color choices was kind of like off. I do like how kind of experimental it got, but I don't know, I feel like sometimes it didn't land. Whenever they use like a lot of white, I thought like, oh, that looks stunning, but other times it just kind of felt like too much. A lot of texturing actually fell off. In the Spider Society sequence in Miguel's universe, I thought like some of the texturing felt off because a lot of them it kind of felt like cell shaded like video games from like back in like the PS2 era. Ben Riley in particular, he looks directly out of the PS2 Ultimate Spider-Man game, and I was like, that kind of weird. I also thought the live action blending was kind of odd. I don't really like that as much. But overall though, it looked jaw-droppingly, it looked amazing. At its best, this movie easily surpasses the first one. I just think maybe the first one overall, like on the whole, feels a bit more put together visually. Personally, my favorite visual thing was the editing. They had all those like panel frames and stuff. I feel like nobody like I've seen on Twitter talks about like all the panel framing they've done, but I thought that was like easily coolest. It reminds me of like Samurai Jack and stuff. They also had like just kind of editing thing overall. Again, in the Gwen sections, it kind of felt like, and even that scene where like Gwen's like swinging with Miles, and like the last scene, it felt like a music video almost with like all the almost getting like expressionist, which I thought was pretty cool. A bit French New Wave. They kind of layered a lot of images. Patrick, remember when we saw Your Name?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like that movie kind of opened with almost like a music video.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt like this movie did. At sometimes it reminded me of like an anime opening, where like more than an actual scene. And I will say like sometimes it hit. Speaking of music, sometimes it's really mixed. I thought like some of the more lo-fi pop tracks were weak, but then like all the other tracks with like a real punch were great. I don't know if you agree, but you remember in the chase scene with Miguel and all the other spider people? Do you think that sounded like "Smack My Bitch Up," didn't it? Because like when I was listening to that, I was just like, you know that song by the Prodigy?
I don't know that song.
Oh, okay, it's like a classic '90s track. But like when I listen to that, it's like it just sounds like that. It's like the it's I don't know. I'm surprised you haven't heard that. Okay,
Maybe I have. I just don't know. I just don't remember it.
yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you. How did your theater react when the To Be Continued showed up?
They actually clapped. It was interesting. They're
Really?
like, yeah, they seemed really excited for the next one. I know a
Because
lot
one
of
of
like
my
other theaters were like really upset. They're like, man, what the hell?
yeah,
Getting so into this.
because my friend told me that the theater he was in, somebody threw their bucket of popcorn.
Yeah, no, I've heard other people tell me like, oh, people booed, but I remember like, I don't know, our theater like actively clapped, which surprised me because I've never seen a theater clap since Avengers Endgame.
Really?
Yeah.
I know my brother saw Spider-Verse 2, and the theater that he saw the movie at also had the same negative reaction. Probably not as extreme, but they still weren't happy.
Also, I saw this with my mom. I'm just gonna say, my mom absolutely loved this movie, which is very, very similar to our family, so she really liked that. And then immediately after that, we got thrown to Spider-Man India. Obviously, she kind of ducked that because the Spider-Man India sequence even had like a couple jokes. It's like specifically funny for Indians, like just like the traffic gags and like this is where the British stole their stuff, the naan bread and the chai tea thing. I actually thought Spider-Man India was a really fun character. What'd you think?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm glad like all the side Spider-Man actually got like development this time because Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, Spider-Pig, in the first movie they barely like did anything. When this one, I felt like Spider-Punk and Spider-Man India and Spider-Man 2099, those were actually like defined characters.
I just have one other question. What
Yeah.
is the Jeep Spider-Man?
The
Oh,
what?
okay, so there's
The Jeep this sounds really weird out
that's
of
a reference
context.
to
There is
that's a
a
reference to a
Spider-Man
toy.
that is literally a Jeep.
Yeah,
I
that's a reference to a toy from like the '90s
Ah, because
where like Spider-Man had a Jeep.
I've been
Yeah, like,
asking
it was meant to be Spider-Man riding.
I've been talking to people about the movie and I asked them, "What the hell was the Spider Jeep?" They're like, "I have no fucking idea."
Yeah, no, it was it's a reference to a toy from the '90s. The thing is, in the toy from the '90s, like the implication was that Spider-Man would be riding the Jeep, but I guess they thought it would just be funny if Spider-Man was the Jeep. So that's cool, I guess. Then they had the Spider T-Rex and stuff.
Is that another toy or is that like an actual thing in the comics?
I don't know. I'm wondering when Spiders-Man is going to show up because Spiders-Man is in this one universe it's just a bunch of spiders that think they're Peter Parker, so it's like this giant like hive mind.
So Man Spider.
No, Man Spider's a different thing. Man Spider's a giant spider that
Hmm,
there's a Spider-Man comics are weird, man. But Man
I
Spider's
believe
like a
it.
completely different thing. In fact, I think Man Spider's in Spider-Verse like in the background. Oh yeah, like your Spiders-Man that I was telling you earlier. Some fans are actually upset at the depiction of Ben Reilly. He was the edgy '90s Spider-Man that was like, "Oh, my tragic backstory," because Ben Reilly is actually like a pretty like complex character in the comics. But I don't know. I thought it was funny, so I don't mind it. But yeah, overall, Spider-Verse, great film. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend. I'm not sure if it's my favorite Spider-Man movie, just because it's a bit incomplete, but it's definitely like top three at least, up there with the Raimi films. Anyway, last bit of movie news is Blackberry. This one's less. I'm gonna spend less time talking about this one, but Blackberry also new movie. It's a very similar movie to kind of like The Social Network, where it's about like the rise of this tech giant. It's directed by Matt Johnson, who's best known for his TV show Nirvana the Band the Show, which is a pretty good show. Highly recommend it. It also stars Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The show that we get our namesake from. And yeah, I'd say if like you're fans of those shows, definitely check this out because it's got like a similar sense of humor where it's like there's kind of frenetic energy to it, and it's about kind of shitty people. It taps into my 2000 nostalgia a little bit too, because the soundtrack uses some 2000s garage rock tracks. But yeah, very messy, chaotic directing style. It's got this kind of almost documentary feel. immediately throws into everything, which I think was like a pretty fun technique. Um, I think it's funny how on the surface it shares many elements with the Social Network, but the actual presentation makes it feel like almost like an opposite or a complement because that movie is so deliberate, cold, and controlled, and this is all messy. That got a Nine Inch Nails industrial soundtrack when this got a more minimalist techno soundtrack, so it's like similar but different. I found the character stuff pretty interesting. One like the crew that made like BlackBerry is just like the classic computer science like college dorm like people. So I was like, okay, I know exactly who these people are. I've met millions of them. I like how Glenn Howerton comes off this intense suit that steams all over everyone and just destroys this whole company, but is actually shown later on in his like own way to genuinely kind of believe in the company and really fights for it and puts everything on the line. At least till Hockey distracts him, and then Jay Baruchel, he starts off as like the typical genius that gets fucked over by a suit, but it's kind of revealed that he has this corporate side to him that was previously hidden by his meekness. You know, he actually screws over the suit and enforces a lot more restrictive and corporate practices. And I like how it doesn't come off as a corruption arc, but just like a newfound confidence or ability to do what he previously couldn't because of his the larger personality of his friends. And yeah, it's interesting kind of a tragic tale because I actually saw this the same day as Spider-Verse. It was yeah, but it's a rise and fall narrative, and like the rise happens, and then generally like the exact turning point of the movie is when the iPhone gets announced because BlackBerry used to be like the dominant phone in the market, and then obviously Apple came and completely changed the game, and BlackBerry was not quick to adopt, so they just the company completely got destroyed. Oh, one more detail. So I mentioned, Matt Johnson, Glenn Howerton, Jay Baruchel, and they all kind of draw from. They're in some of the funniest stuff from the 21st century, and they kind of all drew from their performances from all that stuff. ProZD was also in this, and I thought that was just kind of funny. The YouTuber. Are you guys familiar with the ProZD?
Yeah.
I've heard the name.
He's the guy that made that Goofy sings "Bring Me to Life." So the "Wake Me Up."
Oh, I love that. Oh, that
He's done a lot of very small skits on YouTube.
Yeah.
I guess I'm more familiar than I thought.
But yeah, I really like this movie actually. I'd highly recommend it, and it's I don't know, it's up there. It's of like the 6 movies I've seen this year, I'd say it's probably like number 3 after the 2 superhero movies I saw. Again, because I really like Guardians of the Galaxy and Across the Spider-Verse. But yeah, good movie, recommend it. And I believe you saw The Little Mermaid.
Oh, I'm not going to spend nearly as much time on this. I just briefly.
Cool.
So I had no intention of seeing this movie. It's not because of the controversy, whatever. That is fucking dumb.
Yeah,
There's
you
nothing
just
to do
don't. It's just a live action remake, and you're like, yeah, I've seen the original one. That's why I
Basically,
didn't
I
see
mean,
it.
look. After the Lion King remake, I pay these films like no mind anymore. But my mom wanted to see it, so I'm like, yeah, okay. I actually really liked this one.
Really?
I did. I thought it was pretty charming. It was very pretty. I mean, CGI was kind of weird at points, like seeing Sebastian with Mr. Krabs' eyes, and Flounder had like this blank fish expression the whole time, which was actually kind of funny, but it was still kind of weird. And
I don't
they
think that was
changed.
meant to be intentionally funny, but yeah.
I don't know. And they changed enough of it to like where it wasn't just a blatant retread. Like it's mostly small things, but they kind of added up to me. I don't know. I guess because I had no expectations, the fact that I ended up like it was something kind of different but kind of the same was kind of a pleasant surprise. I mean, I still prefer the original Little Mermaid, of course, but I don't know. Like I enjoyed myself with this one.
How was Halle Berry's performance? Halle Bailey's performance.
I thought she was very good. She was very charming.
Hmm. See, the part I was most curious about was just like her performance, because like the thing that really stood out to me in the original Little Mermaid was the Ariel's character animation, especially when she's on the surface and silent, because I feel like that's generally like some of the best animation Disney's ever done, and I'm like, that the animation, like, 'cause the reason I love the Little Mermaid is I genuinely think it's like one of the best animated movies that Disney's made. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of curious what a live action version would be. I figured like the moments where like she's silent, that would actually like still kind of like that could still be interesting because seeing a character be completely silent trying to act out this stuff, that that's still that'd still be something, interesting to
Yeah,
see.
I
So,
no, I was kind of curious about that too, and I was surprised she pulled it off pretty well.
all right, cool.
So Nowhere is a 1997 American black comedy directed by Gregg Araki. Apparently was at the time described as Beverly Hills 90210 an Acid, and that's like this that was this teen drama that was really popular in the 90s. It actually spanned from the entirety of the 90s, from 1990 to 2000. So I guess that's if you want to see a 10-season show that just depicts what life in the 90s was like, watch that. It was on Fox or something. Apparently that's different from there's a Beverly Hills 90210 is apparently like a big franchise or something, okay? Because there was another 90210 series from 2008 to 2000
I wouldn't know. I've
on
never seen a
CW. Anyone
single
know?
episode.
Neither
I've
have
never
I.
seen never seen a single
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, this is arguably this is Wiley this is the I guess Araki's sixth movie and his third entry in the Teenage Apocalypse film trilogy. This is widely kind of regarded as like probably his best or at least most well-known film just because it's I'd argue it's just the cast because the cast there's actually like recognizable faces in the cast. We got James Duvall, Rachel True, Christina Applegate's in there, and even Denise Richards briefly shows up, and Rose McGowan. So a couple significant names. I think Kathleen Robertson's also in there.
Also, Heather Graham.
Oh yes, Heather Graham. So yeah, this is and Shannon Dottery. Yeah, just a lot of big names. There wasn't a not really for the most part, Greg Rocky operates in complete like micro budget, works with nobodies. Even this movie had a pretty mixed budget. Is that I actually thought it was interesting how so I mentioned how this is the most like well-known movie now, but in terms of actual like critical reception, this is actually like one of his more lukewarm films in terms of like critical reception. Now it's considered a cult classic, but at the time people considered it a bit weaker compared to his other previous films. But because I guess they viewed it as him retreading ground, but to a lot of people this is their first Greg Araki movie, and because of that, it
Case
really
in
feels
point,
like more of an
me.
yeah, it feels like
Yeah,
it's
same
an
here.
encapsulation of every yeah. So I say Nowhere is like an encapsulation of his career up until that point, and it's kind of like if you like different elements of this, you're gonna probably like different one of his previous movies because this is basically like all of his previous movies and as like one. I've actually not seen his previous movies. I've only seen the movies that came out after Nowhere. I've basically watched his films in reverse order. It's kind of funny. The movie's also known for its soundtrack, having a lot of 90s rock stuff from grunge acts like Hole and Radiohead to Marilyn Manson and even shoegaze acts like Slow Dive and the Cocteau Twins. Got Nine Inch Nails. It's really basically just like an encapsulation of the '90s as a whole in soundtrack because it's really got like almost every significant band. Jesus, Mary and Chain, Portishead, even some bands I don't recognize. Just cool. I could probably go into the plot, but it's a pretty loose plot. It tackles a lot of like very difficult but basically it's just kind of a hangout movie, just a hangout movie that gets very, very dark. Similar to I
Do
don't
the
know,
right thing.
yeah, Do the Right Thing or Dazed and
Because that's
Confused.
also a hangout movie that gets very dark.
Yeah, so fitting that we watched them so close to each other. So yeah, I guess what did you guys think about it?
All right, let me start. So I said this is my first Gregg Araki film. Never seen anything from this guy. Never even heard of the guy before. The very first frame of the movie, I knew I was in for something strange when I saw the production companies. Because what studios made this movie? Because Kill presents. Kill, like, what? In association with Desperate Pictures and Why Me Productions.
Yeah, okay, so
Are
that
those
was
real?
The Gregg Araki film.
those are not real companies.
Not
These
a
are
Gregg
not.
Araki. Not a Gregg Araki film. The Gregg Araki film. Nowhere.
Yeah, so those are all jokes. Those companies don't exist.
Uh-huh. But like, why?
If
Like,
It's
what?
anything,
be
it
funny, I guess.
fits.
Like, oh, whoever produces this must be a desperate studio. LMAO.
All right. Well, all right. Getting past the
And to be fair, to be fair, Gregg Araki has done stuff like this before. I believe the previous movie he made, The Doom Generation, it was advertised as the first heterosexual movie by Gregg Araki because
Uh-huh.
most of his movies are about queer culture. So
Okay,
this being
getting
the Gregg Araki film, and to be fair, it is the Gregg Araki film. This is this if you're gonna see any Gregg Araki movie, this is the one to watch. So
fair enough. But anyway, moving past the joke titles and thes and everything, movie itself, aesthetically speaking, this is the most 90s music video movie I have ever seen. Like, the best way I can
yep,
describe this movie is imagine if, like, David Lynch and Jonathan Glazer made a movie together.
Yeah.
Because it has the
yeah,
weirdness of David Lynch and the music video editing style and cinematography of Jonathan Glazer.
yeah.
This
Um,
was something.
Yeah, here's the funny thing. I looked up some reviews, and some people retroactively said that this kind of reminds me of Donnie Darko. And I'm like, yeah, Donnie Darko is a very Lynchian music video type movie. So yeah, that's accurate. This is even more music video than that though. But yeah, I actually showed this to I posted like a screenshot of this on Twitter. One of my friends immediately says like, this looks like every 90. This looks like the most 90s thing ever. And he was like, you ever see like Rules of Attraction? I'm like, yeah, it's similar to Rules of Attraction, or kind of really dark, fucked up subject matter, but it's has this very 90s teen thing going on.
Alright, Lugia.
Okay, where the hell do I begin? Just to sum up my thoughts real quick, I have never felt more mixed about a movie in my entire life. I mean,
You know something? I am exactly the same way.
yeah. I mean, I liked
Okay,
how this movie looked. Again, the 90s music video aesthetic is great, but every now and then there'll be a scene or two that'll make me just want to puke.
Oh my.
yeah,
You basically summed up
okay,
everything.
yeah. Got to give the audience a bit of perspective. Here's the thing: all the other movies, this is the first one I've watched where I'm like, I need to see this again to understand it
Yeah, this is
because
definitely a movie I need
I
to
wouldn't
No, that's
rewatch
the
mind
at
it.
some
thing.
point.
I don't
I
want
wouldn't.
to see this again.
I don't know. I feel there's a lot of really good stuff in it, and I feel
There
the
is a
thing
lot
with
of
Greg
really good
Arkin,
stuff, but there's also stuff in
I
here
did
that
I did warn you guys. Like Gregg Araki, he deals with very difficult subject matter. I will say, the his follow up movie, The Mysterious Skin, deals with a lot of dark subject matter in a much more kind of conventional way, and maybe I should have recommended that one, but the Mysterious Skin is about like the long term effects of childhood sexual abuse. It's basically about what happens to a kid after they get molested, and when they get older. I thought that movie was fantastic. And this movie deals with a lot of like very dark subject matter, but in a much more kind of bizarre slapshot kind of way. To just dive right into it, there's this rape scene, halfway through the movie, and it's dark, uncomfortable, and but it also like they kind of like immediately smash cut from that to like characters that are perfectly fine. There's so much sex in this movie. And what I find fascinating is okay, this is gonna be a bizarre comparison. Have you guys ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Not in
no.
full.
Okay, so Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like this infamous movie where like it's like so like instead of like it has horror like oozing from every facet that like the MPAA was kept trying to be like you got to like edit this out to make it to edit some stuff to make it an R rating, but they actually didn't know what to edit because the movie didn't actually have that much gore. It was just the vibes were just like what made it feel so uncomfortable. That's what a similar thing here, where it's like this movie actually has no nudity, but it just oozes sex out of every pore. This is like the horniest shit I've ever seen in my life, even though it ironically it doesn't actually have any like technically explicit content. It's just all like implication and filmmaking techniques that makes it feel that way, which I thought was like, interesting that you don't actually see anything, but yeah, I don't know. It's got a very dreamlike feel to the editing.
More of a chaotic dream, not so much a nightmare, but
Yeah, nightmare. Yeah, I guess. Again, you guys did compare to David Lynch, and I'm like, it's an accurate. It does feel like David Lynch. David Lynch has a
You could,
similar
you
kind of
could
dream
tell me
feel.
David Lynch directed this movie, I would believe you.
it feels too 90 for David Lynch. David Lynch is like very rooted into like more classical thing, but yeah.
Well, that's why I also brought up Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah, again. Yeah, that was a perfect assessment, I feel. That very very much if you're a fan of those two, you'll like this. Unless you hate gay people, then you probably won't, but yeah. But don't stop watching this if you don't like gay people. I don't know.
Yeah, stop watching this and go fuck yourself.
So the contrast of the presentations of the topics and juxtapositions, like the more tame parts, I thought was kind of fascinating because like I felt like every time there's something fucked up happen, they kind of cut to something relatively normal. So I thought that was like
Relatively.
kind of interesting.
Relatively normal, and then the fucking missing link vaporizes 3 Valley girls off the face of the fucking earth with a ray gun.
Oh, what's really funny is so I looked up like some reviews of this. There are people who are really pissed off at the ending, and I'm like, listen, I don't know how you could watch the entire of the other like 90 minutes of that movie, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, now that went too far. Okay, I'm sorry, but a dude exploding and becoming into like a Kafka-esque bug, that to me is like that's the best way you could possibly end this movie because it's so fucking bizarre. It's the perfect cap to this bizarre ride.
I want to say this is the type of movie that you just watch with your friends to get a reaction out of, but again, it gets too uncomfortable at certain points.
This movie is how I describe it is like it's like a bad trip. You're like you feel like you're high, but you're seeing a bunch of shit that you probably don't want to see when you're high.
The
You know,
thing
it's
is,
like if you're on
I was sober watching this.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah, no, I was sober watching too. It's actually funny because he made a stoner comedy, and what's really funny is the stoner comedy is like I guess like if this is the bad trip, Smiley Face is the good trip because Smiley Face is the here's the funny thing. Like, if you don't like this movie, I would still recommend you watch the other two Gregg Araki movies I've watched because every one of his movies is so completely different from each other. Even if like filmmaking wise, there's similar elements. Like it feels so different from his other movies. I'm like, I, he got range. I'll say that he has definitely got range because Mysterious Skin it holds itself with a bit more weight, which oddly because like it holds itself with like a bit more weight, it's easier to digest because it kind of keeps a consistent tone throughout. And Smiley Face is just like a comedy, and it's like a fun comedy. There's like nothing dark about it, so obviously that's like easy to digest. And the only weird part is the filmmaking, but like once you get past the filmmaking, those two movies are pretty good. So yeah, bizarre movie. I kind of loved it, but I'm also not sure what to think about it. I'm definitely gonna rewatch this movie one day because like David
I'm gonna
Lynch's
rewatch
movies
it too. It's just
here's the thing. Usually when we talk about movies like this on the podcast, I've seen it twice. So I usually have like some other another perspective or interpretation. I didn't do that this time. So I'm as lost as you guys are.
again, like the aesthetic of this movie and like the film from like a filmmaking standpoint, it's terrific. It's just the content.
yeah, because every
And,
now
you
and
know-
then you get a scene where a guy is getting his nipple piercings ripped off of him.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you guys right now. Anything involving
Oh.
a nipple makes me uncomfortable.
Oh,
Like-
by the way, guys, I forgot to mention this. I saw this with a group of friends, and I saw this with a group of friends. Some of them already saw the movie before, so it was interesting seeing this because some of them were like, "Oh, it was amazing," and the others were like, "What the fuck are you showing me?"
It's kind of weird talking about this movie in relation to all the sex stuff.
Um, so the ending actually, so the ending is a deliberate reference to the Franz Kafka story, The Metamorphosis, and because of that, I kind of want to view the rest of the movie from that lens now because like I didn't even realize it was trying to be like a Kafkaesque thing until that point. So now I'm like, oh shit, because I'm a fan of Franz Kafka, so I'm like, oh shit, I should probably like rewatch it and see if like I pick up on any like more thematic ties to his work or something. Very Gen X, very hedonistic. It covers like death, despair, drugs, addiction, friendship, heartbreak. It honestly does like so much because like it juggles so many characters, and they all kind of everything kind of like clashes together, and it's like it it's fascinating. You definitely get transported to this very like unique setting with these very unique characters. Obviously this is part of the new queer cinema movement, so and it's probably of the '90s, so it's like it's very much like kind of feel like you're watching like a time capsule of like a specific era in time. The queer community during the late '90s, like a teenage queer community during the late '90s. So it's like it's definitely just fascinating from that angle alone.
Didn't you say that like early queer cinema was very experimental because it wasn't mainstream? This feels like
Yeah,
that.
no, this textbook, Gregg Araki and John Waters in particular, they very much pushed the boundaries of where they like went as far as you possibly could. Like they were they are intense filmmakers.
With, at least from my perspective, varying results.
Let's go off on a small tangent. So I kind of have a problem with some of the set yeah. I kind of have
The
a
set
problem when yeah.
I love the set design.
No,
Okay, what do you think?
So in mainly in Dark's room, you can just make out the wallpaper outside of his window, and part of me wants to think that is completely intentional given that the whole film is just a bad drug trip, but I don't know. This
Yeah, it was
that just
intense.
sums up my whole thoughts about this movie. I don't know how to feel about it. Part of me
Well,
loves it, part
yeah.
of me fucking hates it.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah, that's why I think like it's something that you need to see more than once, just because like this is the kind of movie where like your thoughts on it definitely will probably solidify like on another watch. Like, yeah,
Well, well, here's
who-
in regards to the set design. Here's what I'm thinking. I get what you're saying, Lugia, but also if it weren't for the fact that everybody else's room and all the other sets were so weird, I think it would stand out more. But I mean, Dark's girlfriend has a fucking Twister themed room.
True.
There's that one guy who has like just a wall of text. And the restaurant they go to for breakfast has like holes in it. I'm pretty sure it was intentional.
Also,
Um,
1-800 go Jesus.
Also, what are these names? Dark, Lucifer, Dingbat, Eggs.
I think that's just
You
kind of
two
a
fruit.
given when it comes to these vibe movies, because in Do the Right Thing, you had like Mother Sister, Da Mayor.
Well, yeah, but yeah, okay.
well,
Fair
here's
enough.
the
But
thing:
like,
we're getting a window into a very like unique, bizarre community, and like I'm pretty sure like these are all nicknames and stuff. But, you know,
also,
it's
also weird question: did they ever establish Zero's age?
I don't think
There-
so.
Everybody else is in high school. It's established. He looks like he's in middle school compared to everybody else.
And yet he can drive.
yeah, I think
He
he's
gets
just
a-
like a
he
young
get-
looking kid.
And he gets a little too intimate with that one girl. Like if he is in middle school, that's a bit too intimate.
Let's
Also, like
see.
we've gone a lot over the sex stuff, but like, my God, that one guy gets beaten to death with a Campbell's soup can.
You can't even tell where's the blood and what's the tomato soup.
I thought some of like the what did I think of like all the romantic stuff? Because I thought that was fascinating. Because I feel like a lot of like more modern queer stories they try to kind of follow more heteronormative stories when this like unique and like the relationships are so messy, complicated, and clearly not what I guess a standard film relationship would be. And I thought that was a very unique and strong element of it.
At least for
I'll be hon-
Dark, I did find it compelling.
I'll be honest, I'm too blinded by everything else to tell if the story is good.
Okay, yeah. Okay, who knows?
Like
Maybe
everything,
just,
everything that makes you want to throw up aside. Let's just take that out of the equation real quick.
It's kind of hard, but okay.
it's a good movie then. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe
Okay.
one day this will be the rare example of a movie we revisit on the podcast because I definitely feel like right now we're too enamored by the production to actually like kind of chew on the actual like story and themes, which like I'm trying to do, but like you know, again, it's just a lot. So
I could still see bits
Well,
and
maybe we'll-
pieces that are, I wouldn't say genius, but like I enjoy a lot. I can appreciate them from a writing standpoint and a production standpoint, but everything else in between, no thank you.
again, it's an uncomfortable movie, but it's I told you guys it was very much trying to be provocative and like this is
It's uncomfortable.
very much trying to
it's-
draw from like actual like experiences and stories that happen, you know.
Look,
in
it's
this community,
uncomfortable,
you know?
it's weird, but it's not boring. And thank
Here's the thing,
goodness for that.
this and Do the Right Thing are very much based off of like actual stuff that like happens in these people's lives. Like obviously through like a very exaggerated lens, but like there's like a genuine like kind of truth and like unique kind of like heart to everything. So yeah. I thought the dialogue was pretty good. What do you guys think of the dialogue?
At one point, somebody says dogs eating people is cool.
I watched a lot of Beavis and
I don't-
Butthead this week. So
I don't know what to say to that. Oh yeah, also for some reason Dark really hates roller skating. Says like he'd rather kill himself than go roller skating, so okay.
Also, I don't know if this guy, I don't know if you guys thought this too, but did anyone else think for like the first like 10 minutes, I thought Dark was Keanu Reeves.
Dude,
I could kind of see it.
I was looking at him. I'm like, this is discount Keanu Reeves right here.
Yeah.
I think I literally
'Cause, like,
wrote
he
down
also-
in my notes discount Keanu Reeves.
Because he also sounds exactly like Bill or like Napoleon Dynamite. He delivers his lines just like Bill or Napoleon Dynamite would. I'm like, okay.
At one point, he even says something like, he says like totally excellent or something at one point, or something along the lines that he would say.
One day, who knows? This generally feels like one of like the few movies that I might just recommend again, like in a year or something, and just like, you know, because I feel like us discussing this like a second time would be interesting. Where like after we get past the presentation stuff, what do we actually think of like the more underlying?
I would
Themes and
actually
characters.
be down for that. You know, like, give it a year, come back.
I don't know how to feel about that, but I
Could
don't
be
know.
like a
We'll
year.
see. Yeah.
And who knows?
Although,
I
would you
might
do
pair
this
with
first
another.
before recommending "But I'm a Cheerleader" again?
He's not doing But I'm a Cheerleader again. That is entirely on me to rewatch.
Yeah.
I'll just talk about that before we get into the real meat of another episode.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I don't want to do Nowhere again because all three of us are like, yeah, we definitely need to like know what to say. Versus like all the other times we talk about movies is mostly just like one person or like two people that, uh, not all three. So that's why I'm just like for Nowhere specifically. I'm like it might be interesting.
Because yeah, we've never encountered this situation before where all of us are completely clueless
Yeah.
as to what to say.
Normally,
Yeah,
Red is the straight man on this shit.
The fact that
Here's the thing,
the fact that even you're lost is something.
Well, here's the thing. Like normally, when I recommend a movie like this, I've seen it before. I didn't see it this time. Granted, Wild at Heart I also didn't see, but for some reason, like Wild at Heart, I was just able to grasp a lot easier. So I don't know, but like, yeah, this is like there are other movies I've recommended where it took me like 2 times to really get it, but like I saw it 2 times before I recommended it to you.
Amazing! It took Gregg Araki to break us.
Not David Lynch.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think. Well, I mean, I think David Lynch kind of
Blue
broke
Velvet
you.
definitely filtered you two.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
I
like
mean,
when we saw Wild at Heart, we kind of knew what to expect. Like we're
Yeah.
familiar with the tropes
we
that
were.
David
we
Lynch
were-
has. This was a whole new ball game.
This was an
And here's the
entirely
thing.
different beast.
This is like the fourth Gregg Araki thing I've seen. So that should give you a clue that like watching his other stuff does not prepare you for like this. At least like the stuff I saw, because I only saw stuff that came out after Nowhere. Who knows if the stuff before it probably it makes it informs it a bit better. But like I don't know. Like I think the stuff he's made after Nowhere is a lot more accessible. So yeah, who knows? Maybe I should have recommended those.
What about before Nowhere?
I haven't seen those yet, so who knows?
Now you're making me nervous.
Apparently, The Living End is a lot of his movies are kind of road trip movies and hangout movies. The Living End is apparently like a crime thing, like Bonnie and Clyde. So, The Living End, I heard, is probably one of the more accessible ones. But his famous ones are The Doom Generation and Nowhere. So a lot of people kind of really just like the hangout, out there stuff. I was thinking about recommending The Doom Generation, but apparently that's about like straight people, and I'm like, well, it's the whole point was Pride Month, so I'm obviously not gonna recommend that. And yeah, Nowhere. I'd actually recommend it. Like, despite everything we've said, I definitely think it's like a unique film. You're gonna have to see to believe.
Just take caution.
Prepare
Take
yourself.
caution. Yes, prepare yourself.
Yeah. It's only 78 minutes. It's not
It is
like
short.
a long.
It's
Yeah,
It's short, but it stays with you.
it's
it
short,
stays with
but
you.
it's very, very dense. Yeah,
you think you've seen everything?
watch-
No.
yeah. So if you watch this movie and you think you like it, some other movies to check out is Rules of Attraction and I guess his other movies. I've heard people compare it to Kids by Larry Clark too, so I guess watch Kids by Larry Clark. I've heard it compared to the work of Harmony Korine, so yeah, watch Harmony Korine's other movies, Gregg Araki's other movies, and The Revolution by Roger Avery. Anyway,
yes,
yeah,
Lugia,
next
all
month, I
right.
guess we'll
Lugia,
rerun.
what's up?
I genuinely don't know how to follow up on this
Well,
movie with another. I mean, I could like
you could double down the weirdness, or you could try to take us back to reality. I mean, that's up to you.
relatively. I mean, like, okay, you know what? This is gonna
From
sound
this Neil Breen.
no. I think I should probably continue with the trend of Pride Month, and I don't think Neil
Ooh.
Breen's ever done any gay films.
I mean, there's the movies where there's two of them, but I
Okay,
guess
but
that
they're
doesn't count.
siblings.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
So
Also, I think we already saw that, didn't we?
no, we saw Fateful Findings.
Okay, I must
I
have seen
could
it on my own
recommend
then.
Twisted Pair at some point, but not now. So fuck it, Chuck and Larry.
What?
Oh,
Wait,
god damn it.
I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry?
Yes.
Okay.
Ah,
I've heard of it.
man.
Not good things, but alright.
I've
Hey,
seen it.
we gotta
It's,
follow up.
Oh
So
yeah,
we
I
had
know
a
that.
good movie for Pride Month. A movie that we were very confused about. Let's get bad. Let's get to the bottom
Yep.
of the barrel, baby.
Have you seen this one?
I
Yes.
have.
I have.
I've seen it fairly recently too.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I've blocked most of this film out of my memory except the Jessica Biel scenes because she's a very
I've never
pretty woman.
seen it, but I know the premise. And
Yeah, it's
Happy
it's
Pride
something.
Month, boys.
and I'm the only one of us who still hasn't chosen an Adam Sandler movie.
Have you?
I've not.
Have I chosen Adam Sandler? Oh,
Yeah,
Punch Drunk Love.
Punch
Yeah,
Drunk
duh.
Love.
I think I've just done the most of his library.
Yeah.
I have a problem. So yeah, I pronounce you Chuck and Larry. This is gonna give you different vibes. That's certain.
Yeah, definitely. You guys ever see the John Maxwell movie, The Ringer? Because
No.
No.
it's got a similar premise, but it's a little bit better to Chuck and Larry. Where it's about a guy who his uncle makes him pretend to be mentally disabled so he can scam the Special Olympics. I know that sounds terrible, but it's a better movie than Chuck and Larry, so that should tell you what Chuck and Larry's like.
Hey, listen, sometimes you gotta hit rock bottom so that you can only go up.
You're putting a lot of pressure on me then. I'm assuming.
Listen, at least Jessica Biel's in the movie. I'm gonna be like, I like the most straight man ever next film. I'm like, I really like Jessica Biel. I don't know how to close this out. Oh god, I feel like my head's exploding. Blah, no cockroach. What the fuck?
The cockroach says I'm out of here. So you
Yeah.
can end it with that.
Dude,
I'm out of here.
I was so thrown off by the ending of this movie, I actually rewound it just to make sure I wasn't crazy. I'm like, I'm sorry, did that just happen? It happened.
All right, I'm out of here.